All right. So, hello, everyone, whoever is here. Thank you for being here. And this is one of my most favorite topics of all times. I'm going to show my chart in just a little bit so you can understand why Mars is very close and dear to my heart. And it was actually such an amazing opportunity to do more research on Mars, and the things that I've discovered blew my mind. It really is some of the facts that I didn't know, the mythology of Mars. So I'm going to be sharing that and how it actually ties so beautifully to the evolution of Mars and what we perceive Mars and Aries to be, and what is actually the potential of Mars. As we know, every planet and every sign really has lower, we can call it lower or higher expression. And just like us as individuals, the planets and the signs really go through evolution as well. And I truly believe that in order for astrology to progress and evolve, we need to open our horizons and our beliefs also about certain signs and certain planets in order for that evolution to take place. And therefore, we can experience this planet and the sign as something completely different. And also to know that every sign and every planet is essentially an archetype, and we all carry those archetypes within us. And as we start evolving our beliefs and perceptions about those archetypes, we actually start to express them as humans in a more evolved way. And especially when it comes to Mars, there's so much that Mars carries when it comes to our own human nature and our own bodies and instincts and desires, all of those things that Mars represent, and how Mars can actually be a representation of those desires and instincts in a more evolved way. You can call it spiritual, evolved, in whatever way, but at the end of the day, Mars is the force within us that helps us to take action, that helps us to live in this world and to initiate and to bring things into life. It's the spark that we need. It's the spark of life. It's the sperm. And without the sperm, we're not going to have a human being. And so we can relate to Mars in that way within us, that without that spark, without that ability to initiate and to take action, life will not exist. It's just a matter of how do we express that urge? How do we express that need, desire to take action and to follow our impulses and instincts? So I'm going to be covering some of that today, and my own interpretation is on Mars. And like I said, the mythology of Mars and how we can start looking at Mars from a different perspective. And also Aries as well, because Mars is the planet that is associated with Aries, in case you are new to astrology. And then I'm going to be looking at a chart of one of the volunteers, Liana. I'm not sure if she's here or not. And if we have some time, I'm going to show a few charts of what we are about to experience actually this summer or winter in Australia, with the eclipses that we're going to have in August, and the new moon and the full moon in July, and how Mars is really playing a very, very significant role in what is occurring this year. And nothing is a coincidence, like I like to say with astrology. Everything is so perfectly orchestrated. So this is my chart, and as you can see, like I said, why Mars is so close and dear to my heart. I have a conjunction of my South Node and Mars is exalted in Capricorn, which gives Mars even more power in my chart. And the fact that it is conjunct my South Node is something that I come here with. I know for a fact that I was some type of a warrior in past life. perhaps even in a male body. I like to see the Capricorn Cancer axis sometimes as a switch of genders. So that's a possibility. I'm not quite sure, but it resonates with me because I do understand Mars energy. I connect to it. I relate to it in a very deep level. And my sun is in Scorpio. And as you can see at the bottom of the chart here, it's not just the sun, it's the array of planets that are all sitting in Scorpio. Scorpio is one of the biggest lessons for me in this lifetime. And the fact that the ruler of my chart, which is the sun, because my ascendant is in Leo, the ruler of my chart is in Scorpio as well. And Scorpio, in the old tradition of astrology, before Pluto was discovered, was the planet that was associated with Mars. And I like to always consider both planets and signs that have two rulers, or an old ruler and a new ruler. I always like to look at the old ruler as well, because there's a reason why those two are associated. And because Mars is so close to my heart, I can, from experience, say that I see the connection between Scorpio and Mars very much so, especially when it comes to our sexual instincts, to our sexual impulses. Scorpio is a very sexual sign. It's connected to our Kundalini energy, that life force that lives in the base of our spine. And Mars is very much, I see Mars as associated with our root chakra and our second chakra as well, our sexual center, and as much as the solar plexus as well, that will that we have. So I do see Mars connected to all those three first chakras in the body, and those three basic chakras are the chakras, the energy centers of existence, really, of our connection to our body and our connection to this physical reality. So just a little bit about my chart to show here, and then another interesting aspect, and that goes into evolutionary astrology, is that my Pluto polarity point is in Aries as well, up here. And as you can see, the Uranus right now is moving through the sign of Aries, which for me is right at the top of the chart, and it's really helping me to reinvent myself and reinvent my Aries energy and my Mars energy in a whole new way. And I'm going to speak about that in just a little bit in a more general context of Uranus moving through the sign of Aries and finishing his cycle in Aries at the beginning into this year, and then going into Taurus next year. So this is the chart of the moment, actually, and I just wanted to briefly show it because it's so interesting to me. And originally, Linda asked me to have this presentation last month, and I just couldn't do it. And then today was the day, and how interesting that, well, we just had the new moon. You see the sun and the moon up here. The moon is in 5 degrees in Gemini. So we had the new moon about an hour ago, or a couple hours ago, I believe, in Gemini. And Mars is in Gemini as well. But what I wanted to show here is that Mars is approaching is exact opposition to Saturn. And that is a very interesting configuration. Not the easiest spot for Mars. Mars definitely doesn't like to interact with Saturn so much, because Mars is that fire energy, like I described. It's the gas pedal, and Saturn is more of the brake. It's the settle down, boy. Like especially in Gemini, Mars just wants to run around and can get very scattered and all over the place. And we can feel it even with our desires and our instincts. Like, I want this, and I want this, and I want this, and I want that. And it's just like all over the place. And Saturn comes in to slow things down. So it doesn't need to be a bad thing. Definitely not. It's just a question of how we work with it. But nevertheless, what I'm seeing in this chart, and the fact that I'm doing this presentation today, Saturn is also, especially in Sagittarius right now, is teaching us truth. Saturn is the teacher. It can be the harsh teacher sometimes, but it is the teacher. And in Sagittarius, it's teaching us truth, and it's teaching us integrity, and it's teaching us spiritual integrity as well. And when Saturn is opposing Mars in this way, it's the lesson of aligning our truth with our actions, because Mars is associated with our action-taking abilities and us taking actions, and how do we act, and how are we too impulsive? Do we let our desires take over? So it's not that the desires and the impulses are bad, it's how we work with it. And Saturn can very much help us to come into that place of alignment and integrity and align our truth, Sagittarius, with our actions. And if our actions or our desires are too dispersed and too all over the place, Saturn and Sagittarius opposing that Mars can really pull us back down to our center, to our own truth, to check in, to do that internal research, especially because Saturn is still in retrograde, to do that internal research within ourselves and ask ourselves, well, what is my truth? What do I really want? And then Mars in Gemini, and with the new moon in Gemini, it could be this moment of, well, I need to decide. It's either this or that. I'm so all about expansion, and it doesn't have to be either or, it's both and more. But nevertheless, we are at this point right now with this new moon, perhaps looking at life or certain situations, and especially relationships, from a perspective or it needs to be either or. And then to take the necessary action that is aligned with our truth, that is based on our spiritual integrity, which is the lesson of Saturn. So I just wanted to touch on that, just, interesting, the alignment with right now. And then Mars is going to hit the exact opposition with Saturn on, Thursday, on Saturday. So definitely looking at a very impactful weekend when it comes to making decisions in your life, and decisions that do require actions, and the actions need to happen sooner than later. All right, so Mars. So much of what we find about Mars and Aries is this, right? It's like the god of war. I was doing my research in the mythology of Mars, and I want to talk about that because we can understand so much more of the essence of the planets and astrology in general. It's so much of it is based on mythology, Roman mythology and Greek mythology. And we can understand and get in touch with what the planets represent. What are those archetypes? By viewing the mythology, by viewing the art from back then. It's exquisite. It's absolutely exquisite. And I'm so grateful that I got the opportunity to do that research and find so much information. So this is what we see. This is the image that we get. Mars, the god of war, forcefulness, violence. It's that animalistic nature, physical strength, which is not a bad thing, but when it's associated with Mars, it always goes into this like forceful and aggressive, physical strength that is associated with aggressiveness. It's the impulsive nature, like I said, and insensitivity. Mars, we don't look at Mars as the sensitive planet, and it's not. There's something to be said about Mars not, for sensitivity, we go to Venus, we go to other planets. Mars is not the most sensitive planet, though it doesn't mean it can be. And that's one of the things that I'm going to cover here. Mars as, from the perspective of a more evolutionary approach. But this is generally what we see and what we find when it comes to Mars and Aries. And just a little bit of art, that I found is this, it's like the force, the aggressive masculine power, wanting or trying to take away something that is forceful. And I just want to read to you something that I found that was astonishing to me, because I didn't know this, that under the influence of Greek culture, Mars was identified with the Greek god Aries, hence the name, the sign Aries, whose myths were interpreted in Roman literature and art under the name of Mars. So we had the Greek culture, which had the mythology of the god Aries, or Aries. And then Roman literature and art put Mars under the same myths and category. But the character and dignity of Mars differed in fundamental ways from that of his Greek counterpart, who is often treated with contempt, revulsion in Greek literature. So when I read that, it really resonated with me, and it felt like, oh, something went a little missing with the way Mars was conveyed in the mythology. It was associated with an energy that, yes, Mars is part of Mars is that, but there's another part to Mars that kind of got swept under the rug or something. It's like we forgot about this aspect of Mars. And what I found, and that was really the most astonishing fact, was that Mars was actually the agriculture guardian. That was the first thing that really got my attention. Because the other characteristics that I'm showing here, those are two well-known when it comes to Mars: having courage, bravery, self-confidence, leadership abilities, passion, initiation, willpower, assertion. All of those are still very much associated with Mars. And those are more of the higher expressions of Mars. But the number one that I put on the top of the list is agriculture guardian. And the forcefulness of Mars, the aggressiveness, so to speak, of Mars, the warrior-like characteristic of Mars can actually be used or be utilized as a supporter and a protector from a more evolutionary perspective. So in early Rome, Mars was the agriculture guardian. So in the early Rome days, Mars was the god of war, and there was an end. It wasn't either or. It was the god of war and agriculture guardian. There's a reason why month of March is actually named after Mars. If you think about it, the spring equinox, at least in the northern hemisphere, it's the spring equinox, happens in March. And it's named after Mars. That's the beginning of spring. And when things start to bloom, and that's the initiation, right? That's the spark, the beginning of a season, and things start to bloom, and we initiate new life. And Mars can very much be the protector of this new life. If it's like this new baby that is being born, and Mars can very much be the guardian of that baby, very much can be the guardian of that very sensitive and fragile energy that is emerging.
Amen.
Hello?
Amen.
Okay, I'm hearing something in the background, so if you can just make sure you are muted. Okay, thank you. So another thing that I found was that although Aries, the god Aries that Mars is named after, was viewed as a destructive force, Mars represented military powers as a way to secure peace. That is a very interesting fact about Mars. And I personally don't believe that we need any military to restore peace or to secure peace, but clearly humanity is still in that place of figuring things out, where we do have militaries and we have the armed forces and whatnot. Nevertheless, we can take that archetype, because obviously Mars is associated with the military. We can take those archetypes instead of the destructive way of using military force, using military forces as a way to secure peace. Like, again, being the protectors and the guardians, not from a place of, I am better than you and I need to kill you because you are different than me, because that's the lower octave of Mars. But it's the higher octave of Mars of, I want to protect life, and evolving Mars in that way and that archetype. And I found this picture, which was very interesting to me. Like, at first when I saw it, I was like, oh, this is so suitable and perfect. And then I was looking at it again and again. I'm like, this can definitely be interpreted in different ways. What I first saw was, this is Mars as the warrior coming to actually rescue the feminine that has the chains on her and the little angel right here. And he's the one coming to rescue her. That's what I saw, first of all. And then everybody is kind of like, hey, cheering Mars, like, thank you for rescuing the goddess. And even like admiring him and adoring him. But then when I looked at it again, I thought, oh, that can actually be the opposite. Like Mars being the one that put the feminine, the goddess, the beauty of life, this little child, chained, and everybody is begging him to please don't kill her, or don't bring your force to this place. And I thought it was very interesting in how this photo can be a perfect representation of those two different archetypes that Mars can express as that god of war, forcefulness, and aggression, and actually guardian and the protector of the beauty of life, which I see the goddess in this way, in this feminine body, which this is Venus, clearly, Aphrodite, Venus, the feminine energy, which is the representation of beauty. And I very much associated that with the beauty of life, Taurus, that's life, which interestingly enough comes right after Aries. So not a coincidence there either. So, up to your own interpretation, I just thought this is perfect from one aspect of Mars to the more evolved aspect of Mars, of actually being the protector and the supporter. We can look at it as the savior or of some sort, but I really prefer to look at it as a protector and reinventing. That's where Uranus, that is moving through the sign of Aries right now, comes into play for all of us collectively, and how we get to reinvent Aries. So within ourselves, first of all, Uranus moving through Aries is so much about the self. And we have been in this time period since 2010, when Uranus went into Aries, of reinventing the self. For each and every one of us individually, reinventing the self. What does it mean? What does my Aries self nature means to me? And how can I elevate that? I see Uranus as the planet that rules ascension and heavens, and not heavens that are to be found somewhere else, but the heaven, especially with Uranus moving through Aries, is the heaven within yourself. And Uranus moving through Aries is, how can you ascend by actually embracing your human nature, by reinventing your human nature, by ascending with your human nature and not apart from it. And then Uranus is going to move into Taurus, which is all about our body and our physical senses and the five senses. So we cannot escape it, nor do we want to escape the fact that it's our human nature and our instinct and our impulses that are going to help us to ascend. But we can definitely use our human nature as a destructive force or as a force of elevation and ascension. And this photo, again, shows us that with those two different interpretations that we can see, that within each and every one of us, how our human nature can be a destructive force or a force of self-power and protecting human nature, and to not lose our human nature and our connection to our bodies and our physical bodies and our instincts. That is something that is so important to acknowledge when it comes to our evolution as a human species, that I truly feel passionate about. And speaking of passion, that Mars definitely rules our passion and just passion for life. So passion, when it comes to Mars and Scorpio, like I said earlier, can be expressed sexually. And that is something that is part of our evolution, and part of Mars from an evolutionary perspective is using our sexual impulses, because it is one of the strongest forces that we have within us as humans. And how can we use our sexual nature and our sexual impulses to ascend? Because we can use our sexual impulse to just procreate, that's one function. And we can use our sexual urges and impulses to just feel good, and there's nothing wrong with that. And also on top of that, and that's almost, we can look at Mars from that perspective, how the archetype of Mars can just be used and utilized in a different way, how those impulses, when reinvented and utilized in the most spiritual and highest way, are those sexual impulses, that life force can be used as a force of creation that is beyond just procreation, of creating actual life as babies, but the creation of something so much more powerful within yourself. And when it comes to coming together with another person, the creation of something so much more magnificent between the two, the connection. And that's where I see Mars so connected to Scorpio, because I see Scorpio as the sign of alchemy. It's the sign of mastery. It's the sign of the alchemical powers. And that's what our sexual impulse, sexual energy can be utilized for, as that alchemical power within you to ascend higher, to find the true heaven within you and not outside of yourself. And again, that goes back to Uranus moving through Aries, is finding that genius. There's a genius power with that that needs to be found within yourself, and it's through your human experience, through your human body. So we can see here, Mars at the leading edge of evolution, Mars being completely disarmed by the feminine. That's the description of this piece of art from the Greek mythology. And Mars is, there's no sword, there's no shield. We don't see it here. Completely disarmed. Why is that? The feminine. And, it's for me, it's almost impossible to talk about Mars without talking about Venus, because those two really go hand in hand. But I'll keep it in the context of Mars. Maybe I'll do another presentation of Mars and Venus working together. But nevertheless, Mars now, and especially when Uranus is going to move into Venus, into Taurus, reinventing the feminine and how the feminine energy can help bringing Mars into a more evolved state, and how it's essential for us to work together. But what I wanted to show in this picture is that although Mars is always perceived as the one with the sword and the shield and the warrior, the Mars can very easily be a peaceful warrior. It's not one facet to Mars, but from a more evolved perspective, Mars can definitely put the shield and the sword down and actually become more of what it was meant to be, like the full potential of Mars. It's just like every individual, there's many facets to each and every one of us. And we must see ourselves in this full potential in order for us to become that full potential. So we can't hold the planets hostage in just one archetype and expect them to evolve. Okay? So we've got to open ourselves up and believe that Mars has more functions than just, war. But we can use that force for something so much more productive, constructive, and actually restore harmony, and actually use Mars as the protector of that harmony and peace. Okay? So I'm going to go into the chart of one of the volunteers, Liana, in just a moment. But to sum it up in a way, what I've talked about so far, and I'm going to show the chart, and it might make a little bit more sense as I go through these categories. But Mars being associated with courage, like I said earlier, and that's something that is one thing that we really want to utilize the archetype of Mars for, is that courage. We all need courage. To take action, to initiate in life, we need courage. And the type of courage that help us to take action that is based on our truth, and that's the chart that I showed earlier with Mars opposing Saturn. It's not always easy to follow one's truth, especially when there's hard decisions that need to be made. We need courage. And we can have free will, but if we don't have the courage to follow that free will, then what happens to that free will? And that's a really important lesson that Mars shows us in Aries as well. We've got that free will. You've got the expression of your free will, and to develop the courage to follow it, and how we can utilize Mars in that way from evolutionary perspective, that our free will becomes an energy of creation and not destruction. Again, Mars can be either or, the destroyer or the builder, at least the initiator that helps us to build and to expand. And this is what I talked about earlier, honoring our instinctive nature and passion. And I'm just going to share here and be, quite vulnerable for a moment, but it was really interesting. I was observing my own feelings and my body when I was, especially last night, I was diving into finding different images of Mars and looking at Mars and the mythology and whatnot. And all I could feel in my body was a lot of sexual energy. As I was reading about Mars and finding information, I was observing that. And I really thought, like, wow, that is really interesting. And it made me realize just how important Mars is when it comes to our instinctive nature and our passion and our sexuality. And, and like I said, passion can be other things, passion to create, the passion to follow your dreams, the passion to just live, passion to be alive. And that's what Mars is. It's life force. It's the spark, it's our life force. And sometimes life can be difficult when you don't really have the passion to live, because there's so much that can just take that flame and diminish it. Okay. So let's not add to that. And Mars, when we work with Mars in a constructive way, in a evolved way, we can take that passion and move it forward and really create so much beauty in the world and in our lives. But what happens, and that's why Mars is associated with anger. Mars is like the fiery, it's the red planet, and red can be passion, and it can also be anger, furious, frustration, and all those things that we feel. But why do we feel those things as humans? Which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with feeling angry. Absolutely not. And that's the whole point of not suppressing your instinctive nature. But from an evolutionary perspective, is understanding, bringing that awareness into, well, why am I angry? Why do I feel angry? Maybe it's a repressed passion. Well, what passions am I repressing within myself? And, Mars opposing Saturn and Sagittarius, what is the truth that I am looking at that is pulling? It's pulling on me to make a decision. So our instinctive desires, like I talked about, and Mars actually being the soldier, so to speak, that is working on the behalf of our soul, which is Pluto. I'm going to show in the chart, which might make a little bit more sense. But from an evolutionary perspective, for evolutionary astrology, Pluto represents our soul. And I really like to see Mars as that, like little brother, or like Pluto is saying what to do, and Mars is just following it and taking action and initiating and moving things forward on the behalf of Pluto. And again, interestingly enough, both Pluto and Mars are associated with Scorpio. So there's definitely a connection there. And Scorpio representing transformation, right? It's like death and rebirth. It's that alchemical process that I was talking about. And that alchemical process always brings about some sort of death. And then Mars comes in like, the soldier that brings life from the death, from whatever needs to be destroyed. It comes in and then initiates new life. So I'll show the chart and talk about that. But again, we need to understand the Mars energy a bit more and really understand our desires and our passions and our instinctive nature to utilize Mars in that way, to use our desires in a constructive way, like I already said. And then also, I found a lot of information talking about Mars, being in service to our sun, in our solar system. And I've always felt that association. I mean, even though Mars is from all of our personal planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars is the furthest away from the sun. Nevertheless, I really feel Mars being, again, like the soldier of the solar system, helping the sun. Again, being the guardian, being the protector, being the one that helps us with that will. And the sun in the chart represents our individual purpose in this lifetime. It represents your own light. I like to see, the association of Pluto and the sun in that way when it relates to your soul. Pluto is the depth of the soul, is what we call the unconscious. It's not necessarily the things that we are aware of, but through the alchemical process, through our own healing work, through our transformation, we start to bring Pluto up to the surface. The sun is the part of your soul that is seen. It's the conscious awareness. It's what the world sees, and it's what you see about yourself. And that's the individual purpose, and how Mars can, as the soldier of the solar system, definitely is working on the behalf of both Pluto and Mars, as long as we can find the harmony, the integrity, the spiritual integrity between all those archetypes and all those forces. Not a small task, but that's why we are all here. So let me go. Oh, and the last one, and I just saw this image and I was like, oh, this is so perfect. I mean, look at this. This is, you know, the symbol of Mars, which is the spear with the shield and the sword. And they put a little heart. Now, this is like for children's story or something that I got it from. I thought it was the most perfect thing of what I am seeing in the world and what I'm seeing when it comes to the function of Mars, and how Mars is merely there, is merely here within each and every one of us, and cosmically speaking, to protect, to support, to be the guardian of the heart. We can see the heart as Venus, the feminine energy, and also the sun, you know, the sun, the solar energy. It's our own light, it's our own love, and we want to protect that. We want to protect our precious heart. We want to protect our light, not from a fear-based, not that we need to guard it and not let anybody see it, but to protect it because it's precious. And so we know how to use our light, how to use our heart, who do we want to share our light and our heart with, and being in touch with our Mars energy, with that free will, with that courage, with that sense of assertion within us, can help us protect and support our love and our heart. So that's I just love this image, and how we can put our love into action and learning how to support ourselves in the best possible way. And our Mars can help us understand, well, how can I support myself better? So not only how do I take action, or what are my desires, but also how can I support my individual purpose? How can I support what I truly desire in my heart? And how can I take that into action? So I'm going to use one of the charts here, Liana, and we can see a very strong Mars Aries signature. First of all, Mars is in the first house. Mars is in a fire sign. So anytime Mars is in a fire sign, even if it's not Aries, even if it's Leo or Sagittarius, those two are fire signs, Mars is very strong because that's its natural element. Anytime a sign is in its own natural element, it gives us extra strength in the chart. So something to pay attention to. Mars in Leo. Leo is also associated with the sun. And Liana's sun is in Aries as well. Like I said, Mars is in the first house. That's Mars's natural home. So she has a strong Mars in her chart, being in fire sign in the first house. Mars is something that she can identify with very much so. And at the same time, it's something that she came here to learn how to express her Mars archetype from that Leo energy, from the heart, how to take action that is really based and rooted in our own self-expression. That's what Leo is all about. And we are going to get a big dose of that in the next 18 months when the North Node is in Leo. Just a side note for all of us. But nevertheless, Sun in Aries. And what is also very interesting here in Liana's chart is that her Sun is a skipped step. It's an exact square, 24 degrees Aries, squaring her nodes. So that is in case you're not familiar with evolutionary astrology, the nodes represent our destiny, our karmic path. In very quickly, to explain what the nodes are, the south node is the past, the north node is the destiny, the future, and the lesson in this lifetime is how do we integrate the two together in order to move forward in the direction of the north node. Anytime a planet is scoring the nodes, we see it as a skipped step. It's not a bad thing. It's just something that the universe, God in the chart, is saying, pay attention to this, because it's a very important, vital energy to pay attention to in this lifetime for this specific individual. Not only that there's a planet here that is a skipped step, we're looking at the sun. That's one of the most important aspect of the chart when it comes to her individual purpose in this lifetime, and having the sun in Aries. So it's saying, pay attention to this. And I would say when it comes to this is like that her purpose in this lifetime is to really be that Aries, especially with Mars in the first house in Leo, is to learn how to follow her passion, how to follow her true passions that are based in her heart, to pay more attention to her heart desires. There's a lot to be said about that, the heart desire, how to utilize those heart desires in order to fulfill her individual purpose here in this lifetime, which is so rooted in that Aries energy, is the me, not from a selfish place, but from a self-actualized place. Like, this soul is definitely here to self-actualize herself. Her north node is in the first house as well. It can be many lifetimes that this soul lived in just being of service to other people, with the south node in the seventh house, but also we have Pluto in Virgo, and that generation of Pluto in Virgo really is here to learn how to be of service to themselves, not just to other people. And her Pluto polarity point is in the ninth house in Pisces. What I found interesting, though, is her Venus is in a very difficult position in her chart. And that's where I want to relate how Mars can be a helpful soldier, so to speak, or the supporter of Venus in the chart. Because her Venus is in difficult position. She has Venus opposing Pluto and conjuncting Chiron. What I'm seeing in this is that there might be some, difficult beliefs about love and relationships, especially in the sign of Pisces. It's about this unconditional love, this spiritual love that wants to be experienced in this lifetime. But there's a wound. There's a fear. And because it's in the ninth house, there might be a wounding in her beliefs, the beliefs about love, the beliefs about spiritual love, the connection with God. There's some type of spiritual wounding that can hinder the ability to self-actualize, because there's an underlying distrust, perhaps, or an underlying lack of courage to really go for it full force, to really follow my heart, to really follow my passions and my heart desires, because there's this fear. I don't know if I believe that this unconditional love can exist. And it's about finding that unconditional love for oneself. First of all, North Node in the first house in Cancer as well is really learning how to nurture the self above all else. And Mars in Leo and Mars is also trining her midheaven. Okay, so that can be a very helpful energy to utilize and to work with. Mars in Leo, and using that courage that can only come from the heart to believe, to restore the trust, to restore the faith. This is about faith. There's a deep wounding when it comes to faith, the feminine energy that might not feel safe, you know. So the masculine energy in this chart, which is very strong and is stronger than the feminine, even though her Venus is exalted in Pisces, like I said, it's under some difficult situation here, conjuncting Chiron and opposing Pluto. So Mars can, that masculine energy within the soul here, the desires that come from the heart is something that this person really needs to pay attention to. Not what other people say. Pluto in the third house in Virgo, it can be like this desire to always please other people, to always be perfect in one way or another. And there's an invitation to open up more and to really trust and follow one's heart, to have the courage to follow one's heart and to fully actualize the human potential of this one individual with this son of Aries, like to be the Aries that you are here to be in this lifetime. So that's my input about this specific chart. And now we are approaching 4:15, so I just want to see if there's any questions that anybody has, or comments, anything. If Liana is on the line, if you have any comments on what I just said. I'll take that as a no. Okay, so just to finish with a few things here, like I said, the charts that I wanted to show for this summer and what's upon us, just to understand how Mars is really going through this activation, and it's the activation of our heart, having the North Node in Leo, and Mars being in Leo. We have a summer, very hot summer, energetically speaking. There's a lot of fire in the air, and it's all in the name of activating our own heart, activating our own self-expression, and activating our courage to take action that is rooted in our own individual self-expression, truth, and the love in our heart. It's that, again, the putting love into action. So this is the new moon in July in Leo, 0-degree Leo. Mars is conjuncting the new moon. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. We're going to have such a new burst of that creative energy and the ability to initiate our creative expression, whatever it may be, and to connect our passions with our heart, and to build, to create something completely new that can sustain us, you know, being in Leo, and that big sign that really can sustain us for a long, long, long time. So pay attention to what is bubbling within you right now. And comes July, it will be go time when it comes to initiate your own self-expression. And then full moon, lunar eclipse that we're going to have on the 7th of August, 11:11 Pacific time. Mind-blowing, I've got to say. Like when I saw that 11:11 exactly, same thing. Mars is conjuncting the sun, still part of this full moon, the completion that is going to take place. And then the big one that we're going to have a solar eclipse in Leo. We're going to have 2 new moons in Leo, you guys, that again, not a coincidence. A month later, August 21st, in the last degrees of Leo, Sun and Moon together, and Mars is conjuncting the north node of the moon in Leo. There's so much fire, there's so much courage, and the opportunity to utilize Mars in the most evolved way for your own self, to find this new sense of courage within yourself and the ability to take action in a new way that you've never, ever experienced before. Yep. All right.
Okay.
I will end here.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Did you want to take a few questions? Or?
My pleasure. Yes, I would love to take some questions if we have time.
Okay, could you click on stop share there, please?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so I see one question here. Noah, what do you think about Mars as being in the top of a T-square? How should Mars approach the other planets? Liana, are you talking?
I think you answered that question for Liana. Her sun squaring her nodes.
Uh-huh.
You did answer it.
Yes.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to have enough time to go back to the chart.
Yeah.
So any general questions, and then we'll have to wind down. Wendy says, that was wonderful.
Yes, I see that. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you so much.
Go ahead.
I had a question. Can we apply the same principles of Mars to the ascendant?
Yes, actually. I think it's Wanda asking the question. I absolutely. I see the ascendant as the spark of the soul, and it's the gate, the opening to the first house. Anything to do with the ascendant and the first house is immediately goes back to Aries and Mars. So yes, we can definitely apply that.
Yeah, because I've always looked at the ascendant, and it's interesting, I was kind of smiling as you were describing, because that's how I describe the ascendant, as the soldier for the rest of the chart, as the infantryman, especially being an former army person myself, that's what always occurs to me with Mars and the ascendant.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we go back, and Wendy commented here that love the sperm and Mars. It's literally that. And even the symbol of a sperm, right? It's almost like the Mars. It's Mars. It's that circle with the little tail. So those archetypes are all connected in one way or another. It's the spark of life.
So Noah, thank you very much for bringing new life to the Mars archetype today.
My pleasure.
Just so beautiful. Thank you so much. And I'll just unmute everyone to say thank you. And we'll see you again next time, Noah.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thanks, Noah.
Thank you. Fabulous presentation.
Absolutely brilliant.
Okay, thank you.